Don't fear the light within. May it ignite the sacred flame in your soul. So it says Paulo Coelho. Good morning, everyone, and we will begin today's celebration of life with our opening congregational song, accompanied by our musician for today, Nick Kinney. And it will be in the
White book.
White song book, and it starts with B. So start looking in the book for the B's for both sides now. And once you have found that, I invite you to rise and body your spirit as you are willing and able to join in singing both sides now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the First Existentialist Congregation of Atlanta. We are a spiritual community philosophically based on existentialist and feminist principles, dedicated to human liberation and the protection of the natural world. We make our spiritual home here in the Old Stone Church, which was hand-built by the African American Antioch East Baptist Church. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove those African Americans from this area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this place. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all Indigenous people. Our opening words this morning are simply, we are experiencing change in this moment, which is the very essence of existentialism, recognizing that nothing is constant but change.
Yeah.
The light is shining brighter in here than when I first arrived, at least. And we will continue to notice changes throughout the celebration of life. If anyone has a community announcement they would like to share, please write it down on the materials that are provided on the back table there, and I will share those in a short while. If you do have a community announcement, please make it during the community announcements and save the personal joys and sorrows period for truly personal announcements. Do we have anyone here for the first or second time? Or yes, would you like to let us know who you are and how you came to be here?
I can't stand up.
That's fine. You don't have to stand.
My name is Mary. My second time. I'm thrilled to be here. I love you guys.
Well, welcome back, Mary. Glad to have you again.
And I'm Lily. I'm Mary's friend. I made her acquaintance 4 years ago when she was carrying a book by Eckhart Tolle in a senior citizen. So that's my new best friend.
All right. Well, welcome, Lily. And then, yes, way back in the corner.
Yeah, I'm Carol Birch Brown. I'm visiting my dear friend Kenny right now, and so I'm here today. And I've also been to many other events in this place because of my friendship with Nick and Lily Swift. Some very memorable experiences here.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to
And Carol will be one of our artists in the future for an exhibition sometime in the coming year.
Hello, my name is Catherine, and I followed up the God's garden and asked if we should recommend a church for me. I'm from the Bay Area, and so I was looking for another church home. So she recommended I came to the week before. I really
Well, welcome back, Kathy. So I will go ahead now and direct folks' attention to this little flap in your bulletin, the connection card. And if you are interested in learning more about us, if you can fill that out and leave it in the collection plate later on. We have a weekly e-blast that goes out once at the beginning of the week that gives information on the most recent celebration of life and upcoming events, and then one again later in the week that details the information for upcoming Sunday details. So, we hope to get to know you better by filling that out. And anyone celebrating a birthday or anniversary about now? And Jean has a community. All right, then, in that case, we will go ahead and sing our next congregational song, which is also, this is also in the
Everything's going to be in the
Okay.
white book. Everything's alphabetical today.
All right, so again, in our white songbook, I shall be released. So, looking up the eyes. Well, I have a message from Marcia, and that is that she is unfortunately not going to be able to be with us today because she is one of apparently many who contracted COVID recently, and so we send her our best healing wishes to get well soon. Anyone have a community announcement that you have not gotten to me yet? All
Next
right.
month's artist will be Deanna and her friend.
Diane Hauser.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have some really fun guest music that night. Have a really great flautist and saxophonist and also a clarinetist, all the same person. Michael Owens will be here with me for the ambiance.
And this will be on Friday, June 6th.
Oh, great.
Our next art opening. All right, so other upcoming events. We have the book and bake sale, which will be on Saturday, June 14th in here. And prior to the event, many volunteers are needed to help with collecting books, bringing them in here, sorting them, and we have time slots Thursday through Saturday, the event itself, and then on Sunday, anything that is left over and unsold needs to be boxed up and taken to volunteers' cars to then be taken to other places. So, if you would like to assist with the book and bake sale, Libby and Charlene are kind of spearheading the event, and Sara, I'm sure, will have in an e-blast ways or how you can contact folks to volunteer for that. Also, on this upcoming Sunday, and Jean, you have May 11th, but I think that date's already passed.
Is today May 11th?
No, today's the 18th.
Thank you. I'm just sorry.
But next Sunday,
Oh, right, the 20th.
25th, I think, yes.
Thank you.
So Jean will be leading the e-chorus and having a rehearsal next Sunday morning at 10:15 a.m. And will that be up here or downstairs?
No, that'll be up here.
Okay,
And
okay.
we'll be running the songs, special music for that. Next Sunday's Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
All right.
please join me.
So if you'd like to participate participate in the e-chorus, please come at 10:15 next Sunday morning. All right. We are now going to move into our time of silence. This is a period of about 5 minutes where we hold space with one another silently and allowing ourselves the freedom to go where we need to go. We have candles on either side of the sanctuary if you would like to light one for some reason.
The day. Hope we've chosen wisely.
Well, as Mick pointed out, we have a pinch hitter, so to speak, today, because our originally planned speaker, Carol, what was Carol's last name?
Catherine Moore.
Oh, Catherine Moore, unfortunately had a medical emergency and so was unable to be with us this morning. And so we have Sara Drew, our outreach minister, to share thinking about the unthinkable, contemplating the end of life. Please join me in welcoming Sara Drew.
Thank you, Patton. Yeah, like everyone has mentioned, I feel lucky that I had been thinking about something and have something to say, but I would love to, have some remarks and then offer the microphone to anybody that has anything to say, questions to ask. Not that I'm necessarily an expert, but that I would love to invite you all to be pinch hitting along with me. You might already know this, but I'm a hospital chaplain, and part of my role in the hospital is to help people execute a form called an Advanced Directive. Are you familiar with the form, the Advanced Directive? Has everybody heard of that? I see a lot of shaking heads. A lot of times in the hospital, and right, like as a chaplain, often I'm like, why me, right? Like, what do I have to do in this process? But I take it really seriously because a lot of times in the hospital, it feels to me like it's a dire situation, and somebody, maybe not the person who's actually going to sign the Advanced Directive, is really pushing for it. And so I take my job really seriously in the way that I want to make sure that the person who's signing it is getting what they want on this piece of paper, or maybe they're not filling it out at all if that's what they want, and not to be influenced by whatever voices. The reason why this was the topic of the pinch hit, which I realize is not such an exciting topic usually, but Marcia and I had just gone to this workshop last weekend. It was a workshop by an organization called Final Exit Network. And Mary Ellen, I'm forgetting her last name, but I wrote it here. Mary Ellen Bates was the woman that works for Final Exit Network as a volunteer that gave this workshop. And she had started talking about an advanced directive in a different sort of way. And so it has me really thoughtful about it. So I'm just going to talk about the advanced directive in general and then offer sort of my interpretation of Mary Ellen's take on it. And so basically, if you don't know, it's a Georgia form. Every state has their own. I think every state has their own. I'm really only involved in Georgia. And basically this form allows you two parts. One part, a lot of people use just the first part. And it allows you to name a person who will make your healthcare decisions for you, only healthcare decisions for you, if at some point you can't make them for yourself, for whatever reason. I always use the example, often because it is in those dire situations, that it's for everybody. It doesn't mean anything by itself, right? I always use the example that if I'm driving home from the hospital today, or from First E today, and I get in a car accident, I'm unconscious, they bring me back to the hospital, I can't make my own healthcare decisions, right? I'm unconscious. Then if I have this form on file, they'll know who to call and say, hey, what would Sarah want us to do, right? And so it's for whatever situation leads us to needing another person to make decisions. And then the second part is all these other decisions. So you could decide, I'd prefer to be cremated, I'd prefer to be buried, I'd prefer this, I'd prefer a feeding tube, I'd not prefer a feeding tube, I do want CPR, but I don't want that. All these like very particular things. And I always feel torn about that second part because we don't usually know under what circumstances those things are going to happen, right? It's really hard to say in this like blanket way, this is what I want, because it's like, well, I need the context, right? And Mary Ellen made me really think about that context and how we don't know what it's going to be. And so she was in particular talking about that healthcare decision maker. In the state of Georgia, this form is optional, so you don't have to have one. But if you don't have one, they're going to try to find you. They're going to try to find your like next of kin, the person who is legally responsible for making those decisions for you, even without the form. So if you're married, it's your spouse. If you're not married, then there's this whole sort of, parents, children, how old are they? Feels like an algorithm that they use to figure it out. And Mary Ellen was saying, a lot of people pick their spouse, even though that's who you would already have. A lot of people pick their spouse. And she was sort of saying, that's nice. It sort of feels like a vote of trust, a vote of confidence, you know? Like, I trust this person to make my decisions for me. She was saying, like, actually, what you want is, like, a bulldog. Like, if you have somebody in your life that does not care if people like them, and they will do what you want them to do no matter what, that's the person. And she was saying her sister is her person. She feels really lucky that her sister is a lawyer and, you know, will not back down from any medical situation in which she knows what her sister would want. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, is like who, given that we don't know the context, would be able to stand up for you in this very high pressure, intense, emotional perhaps situation. So that's really interesting. That's one thing I've been thinking about her and the Advanced Directive, the information that she provided. She also said, I didn't know this, but you can hire somebody to do it for you. So you can hire a network, and I have the resources that she gave in the bag if anyone's interested in my bag, if anyone's interested in that. That's really interesting, sort of like taking the emotion out of it and, you know, just making the decisions as the person had directed when they were capable of making the decisions. And then the second part, I always wonder in the hospital, you know, some people fill out the second part really detailed, even though they don't know the context. Some people seem to really know what they would want no matter what, which is amazing to me, because I feel like I need all the information, which, like, I'll never have, right? If I'm in that situation, I'll never have all the information to make the decision for myself. That's the whole point. But some people really do seem to have all that information. And she and I were talking about how often Part B is followed without the person, the healthcare decision maker, being the force behind that. And she said her understanding is that hardly ever, right? The person has to be on board and be pushing the detailed information for it to actually happen in practice, which is really interesting. So the Part B, and often what I'll say in the hospital ends up being advice for this healthcare decision maker perhaps, but it's really an opportunity to sort of think about those things. What would you want? What circumstances might you find yourself in, and what are the different versions of that? There is a spot in the Part B where you can just write in anything you want. It's like just lines. And so you don't have to just answer the questions. You could write out if this, then that, if this, then that. But like I said, it ends up being sort of advice for that healthcare decision maker. Really what it comes down to is who's able to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. Or, Mary Ellen's whole point, and the final exit network's whole reason for being is that you plan all those things beforehand, so you are the only decision maker. So you make sure that you get what you want before the advent of you not being able to make a decision. And so really, and I'm not going to talk about the particulars of this, but I'll tell you that really they're interested in offering people ways to end their lives in a, you know, very critically sick people at the end of their lives, offering them ways to choose to end their lives if they want to. And there's all these different ways you could do that. I'm not really going to talk about that, except to say that the thing that she, you know, considers the crux of that situation is, again, we don't know the context of when we're going to have to use any of that information. And so she gets a lot of phone calls, a lot of people saying, hey, I'm really interested in this. Can we start the process? Which she at minimum takes 6 months, might take up to a year. So she gets a lot of people coming in and saying, hey, I want to consider this. This is the situation I'm in. They have a lot of motivation. They have a lot of, like, she called it oomph, right? Like, they're ready to go. They want to get the ball rolling. but then because they're sick, either physically or have some dementia or something happens often that creates this, like she described it as a closing of a window, right? Like in the beginning, they're gangbusters, like let's go, let's do this, but the whole thing is founded on you having to make those decisions and you doing those things on yourself, by yourself. Nobody can help you. That's part of it, right? Legally, no one can help you. And so she really thinks she has this idea of like the window of opportunity, which I think is really important. So as far as I know, we're all in that window of opportunity, right? Like we might be in the position today to decide what we might want in any given situation. And so her main drive in this workshop was to say, think about it, tell people what you want. She said the most successful situations she works in is people who are like, all my life, my dad has said X, Y, Z, right? Like, if this happens, then I want that. Those situations where people are just so settled with what their parents or whoever in their life wants are the ones that go the smoothest, and where the people really get what they wanted, because the person who's making the decision is not in turmoil. They can proceed as needed for their loved one without a lot of, hiccups. And I think that's really interesting to sort of think of that as early as possible. They have all these requirements, like you have to tell everyone that's close to you what you want, and they all have to agree to it to some extent, which is interesting. I don't know if this is my own sense of things, or if everybody has this sense that like these are not conversations that are had, right? Like we don't commonly sit at the dinner table and talk about this. Is not Thanksgiving conversation, maybe. Or maybe it is, and so how can we sort of, make it more part of our regular conversation. This is what I've been thinking about. This is what I want, and I think it's really interesting. I got here to this place of being real comfortable with this conversation, being a hospital chaplain, dealing with it all the time. Actually, my impetus was being trained as a birth doula and thinking about all the ways in which we celebrate birth and all the ways in which we prepare for birth and how we tell everybody and how we have these, if anything, that conversation is getting louder, right? The gender reveal parties and the baby showers and the baby moons and that's all just exploding, and thinking of all of that fanfare, which is beautiful and wonderful and so celebratory. To think of that process many years ago led me to think what really is the difference? Is there a difference, right? And so then I got trained as a death doula, which is a different job, which is actually very similar, right? There's less birth, the actual physical act of birth, but the situation is the same, right? How do we create opportunities to think about what we want our legacy to be, what we want to leave behind? I'll never forget, just like there's this concept of a birth plan, this is what I want for my birth, this is how I want it to go, I want a natural childbirth, I want an epidural, XYZ, right? Which is also in the context of not actually knowing how things are going to happen. There's also a death plan concept in which you say, unlike the Advanced Directive, which is very medical and, what's the word I'm looking for? Medical and almost like a cold version of the death plan, right? The other version of a death plan can be really beautiful, right? I want some fanfare. I want a party. I want some music, right? Jean. I know Jean wants some music. I don't have to think about it, right? Or, I want this peaceful, sort of quiet, calm, gentle atmosphere when I'm actively dying and for my death. I want everybody to come. I want just my few closest people to be there. I'll never forget this one. It was an example in the death doula training. It was someone who was creating this death plan who knew that the consequences of their medical condition were going to cause their mouth to become really dry. And so usually in the hospital there's it's like a little bottle of water. It almost looks like a thing that you would use to wet stamps, like it's a bottle and then it has like a sponge on the top to keep someone's mouth wet. And they said they wanted their mouth to be kept moist with mango popsicles. That was part of their death plan. And just thinking about death in that way, I think has a lot more meaning, perhaps. Not that the other stuff isn't important. I think it's all part of the greater conversation. But I do think, when I'm thinking about this, pretend Thanksgiving dinner conversation, that version of things seems a lot more palatable, right? How can we bring our wishes into our general life, and how can we make those around us comfortable with them? It probably starts more with the mango popsicle version of things than the feeding tube version of things, right? Those things just become a lot more easier to talk about, and hopefully they'll lead to the other stuff. And then the last thing, before I open it up to you, that I wanted to talk about is this idea of a good death. And it's so up to interpretation, and all these things are sort of involved. But I think the biggest thing that's involved is maybe just, and I'm hesitating to say this because it feels like my opinion, which it probably is, so take that with a grain of salt. I think the biggest thing about a good death is recognizing that it's a part of life, right? Recognizing that it's not a failure, it's not something it's not a punishment, it's not something that's being, certainly there are deaths which are tragic, and hopefully none of us will have to deal with this before our time is well spent. And also, it's not something that needs to be culturally this thing that's seen as a failure, is the best word I can think of to say it. And I think for me that is easier to say because I don't necessarily, this is definitely my own belief, I don't see people who have died as being gone. And so I think that's something to think about too, is if, certainly my theology, my ideas, my spiritual connections make it easier for me to say, and so I recognize that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts or your questions or your ideas. Thank you. Ted's back in the corner there.
Dr. Ted. So many questions, but one of them is because you have so much experience in dealing with people who are dealing with death. Some people I talk to, and of course I'm going to do long-term association. Every time we talk about someone has died, I hear these questions I don't even want to answer. They're trying to narrow down, is it their fault? What did they do in life for this to happen? What were they doing at the moment? And I'm like, can't you just, I don't know, respect the moment. I feel like it comes from a religious tradition, more of a Baptist background or something. I don't know, do you see that or experience that, feel that in some people when they're addressing death, trying to find a blame for it? When you said their fault, that's what made me think about this.
Yeah, I think often, yes. I think less, I think that happens, in my experience, less with the people who are actually dying and more with the people around them. I could have done this differently, which I think is really natural to just be like, oh, I didn't want this thing to happen. What could I have done to change these circumstances, Yeah, and I'm really careful in the hospital. It's not my job to tell anybody that what they think is wrong. Like, I'm only affirming, but in those situations where it just seems really painful, right? It's like this really just, I could feel the sting of that feeling just to say, there are things we can't control, and what does it feel like to think about what you couldn't control in this situation, and just to sort of give them the other side of the coin. But yes, absolutely. And I do think that has to do with our ideas about death, right? It's like that idea that we need to fight and we need to win and we need to, succeed and be successful, and that means that we're alive. And like, that's the medical context too, right? The whole medical context is to not allow death, right? That is like literally the medical team's sense of failure, and so it's hard not to get caught up in that too. Yeah. Yeah.
My name is Charlene. I would like to say nothing unreal cannot be threatened, and nothing unreal really exists, and there lies the piece of rock. And this statement came from the book of Murders. Nothing unreal cannot be threatened. So therefore, I never believed in death, because as a trained respiratory therapist, seeing so many people die, and then so many people live also, and on ventilators right in front of my face, I did not understand death until my husband transitioned. And that is one reason why I am here. And I always say that because my husband transitioned right in front of me, and I could not see anything taking place because my eyes wasn't at that point to be able to see that. So if we know that the breath of life is a continuous flow of air, how can it ever dissipate? So I'm really struggling with that, and I thank you for opening it up, because I got a stack of those. When I go to the doctor for my physical, he said, have you did it yet? Have you did it? And so I turn it over to my son to look at it, and he don't want to really look at it. So I'm gonna try to get to it, even though I don't quite believe in death. I always thought my husband would go first. He was from a family of long livers. My family wasn't from a family of long livers. We died in my family 75, 80, pretty healthy, but 75, 80. And his father lived to be almost 100, so I thought, oh, wow. he gonna be here. And then when it is not the death, it's like you say, tragedy and unexpected death is the ones that's so devastating. And leaving the widow, we always think about the person that's dying, but the widow, the person has to be protected. And so.
Thank you. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yes, this is just a share. I was missing my mother's friend because I had a really great connection with her. And I was talking to my sister about it. She said, well, for me, it's just like they're out of town. She said, that's my sister's connection. She's a interesting lady. She said, Kathy, to me, they're just out of town.
Yeah.
We'll see you later.
Can we get a copy of that advanced directive online, and where does it get filed?
That's a great question. Yes, you can find it online. I have one copy here. It's called the Georgia Advanced Directive for Healthcare, and it is filed in your medical chart at whichever hospital systems you go to. So you need to take it, if you're going to go to more than one system, you need to give it to more than one system. Yeah, so if you go anywhere at Emory, for instance, it'll be everywhere at Emory. But then if you go to Northside, you got to give it to them too. Yeah. So.
Well, I think everything you said is very interesting, and I certainly think it's that the planning you talked about is a really, really good thing. At the same time, I find it a little bit suspicious of the desire to control. I mean, it's only if people think they really can control all of these circumstances that it's a problem, but it just seems like it's a balance to be struck. And then one of the things that death teaches is we aren't in control, and we have to let go.
Yeah, it is such an interesting balance between prepared and not, like, and it works that way for a birth plan too, right? Like people can get, I just have more experience with the birth plan playing out, but people get really like, this is how it's going to happen. And you just, there's a couple things left in life where you cannot make things happen a certain way, and birth and death are among them, you know? We don't know how it's gonna happen. And so, yeah, you're left at sort of thinking of the overarching things and thinking about, well, the broad strokes maybe, and like what you would like in general. But like, I think of that, how Mary Ellen would say, like, her most successful cases are those people that were like, my dad said blah, blah, blah. All of those examples she gave were like, my dad always said that if he didn't want to be resuscitated. You know what I mean? Like sort of those like, you know, more overarching things and not the particular things. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that's what makes it so hard, right? Is that we don't have control and we don't know how it's going to go. And so that gives us maybe even fuel to not think about it, right? Because you're like, well, I don't really have, but then if you get past that window of opportunity and you don't have your sensibilities anymore or the motivation to drive anymore, you could end up in a situation where you really don't want to be, but you have no way to get out of at that point. So doing what we can to protect against that, if we are interested in doing that, is important. Yeah, thank you, Sal. Anybody else?
So, this is just the practical side of things.
Yeah.
I went to a workshop recently on the directive as well as like will writing and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And went through the form and went ahead and filled it out. And now I can't find the two witnesses that need to do it, and so I'm wondering if we should maybe like schedule a time where everybody can bring in their advanced directives, and we'll all just be each other's witnesses.
Yeah. Actually, anybody. That's another thing about this form that's really interesting is that it does not need to be notarized. It just needs two witnesses, and they can literally be anyone that is not named in the form at the hospital.
And that's not named in your will.
Okay. At the hospital, we also don't let employees sign, just because we don't want someone involved in your care to be signing. That's a little dicey. But yeah, absolutely. I'll be a witness. I can sign up for you.
I need one more. Do I have a witness?
Thank you all so much.
more sunlight is shining in our windows now today. Thank you so much, Sarah, for bringing that information to us and pinch hitting. So we will have a closing congregational song, and as soon as we finish with it, I will be extinguishing the flame and have some final words. So, Nick, what is our final